Land, the masters of the outback. Very diverse gecko. Lizards, so they feed mainly on cold blooded prey. Yeah, frogs, lizards, anything around water. Occasionally might be when it's not raining, so that's pretty amazing. That's what we've basically come here to find. So this guy here is a marsh snake, Hemiaspis signata. These guys are pretty common along the east coast of Australia, from south of Sydney up into North Queensland. They're one of the more commonly sighted snakes and often mistaken for red bellies and brown snakes. So these guys, it's a bit of a funny story because there's heaps of them up my way where I live around Newcastle. There's tons of these guys. Most common snake, I see them all the time. But I've come down to Sydney at the moment for the weekend, and all my friends from Sydney are saying, oh, I never see these guys in Sydney, they're not that common here. First thing I find in Sydney with an hour of being here is the marsh snake. They are common, they're everywhere. Not many places around, as long as there's a bit of bush, a bit of water. Down there there's a dam, there's a creek up there. So anywhere like that, you're going to find these guys, the marsh snake. Also known as the swamp snake, the black-bellied swamp snake. This one doesn't have an extremely black belly. It's probably about to shed actually, it's getting a bit cloudy. This is a relatively large individual, they don't grow much bigger than this. They're an elapid, a venomous snake, but they're only mildly venomous. He has bit me a few times. First one here was a dry bite. Then these two on my thumb and this finger, I can't really move to the full extent, so that's kind of a venomous bite. But then he did a really big, which is the worst bite I've had from a marsh snake. This bite here, and it's quite swollen and itchy. So that's, he actually hung on and chewed for quite a while. But unless you're allergic to their venom, it's nothing to worry about. But I do find, whereas a whip snake, yellow-faced whip snake, their bites are a little bit more painful. Marsh snake bites barely cause any pain, but itch for days. You've actually got a bit of swelling and itchiness for days, whereas a whip snake bite's a bit of immediate pain, but then that goes away and it's not much. So yeah, marsh snake bites are kind of annoying because they're itchy, but it's nothing to worry about, they're not dangerous. These guys mainly eat frogs and lizards. So they feed mainly on cold-blooded prey, yeah, frogs, lizards, anything around water. Occasionally might eat little eggs and that. They can be told apart from other stuff by these yellow lines along their lip there. So they're pretty common. They're a nice little snake. Now it's funny because Australia is known for its venomous snakes, its deadly venomous snakes, whereas in fact the vast majority of Australian venomous snakes are actually only mildly venomous and not considered dangerous to humans, like this guy. So we've only got a few, really, like 20 or so snakes that could actually kill people. The rest of them, it's hundreds, are actually harmless, even though they're venomous. So there's really no need to be scared of snakes or kill snakes. And marsh snakes, when you pick them up, are quite inclined to bite, but usually don't do much warning, they'll just randomly bite. But if you put them on the ground, the first thing they do is try to get away. They never stand up and do the defense posture. They're a nice little snake, nonetheless, this little marshy. So yeah, often they get subcutaneous parasites from eating frogs that also green tree snakes will get, but can't see any on this guy. He looks in pretty good condition. He's quite fat. You can see he's actually lost the tip of his tail here, which would have been from a bird, I'd say, pecking at it. So they're predators, birds, larger snakes, goannas, big lizards, feral animals, unfortunately, like foxes and cats and dogs. You know, they're a nice little species, nice to have around, certainly nice to see something. Walk up to that lookout there, and on the way back we're at Somerset right over the lake. So this guy here is a young thick-tailed gecko. They do get bigger than this, he's not quite full grown. See him here. They're very cute little geckos. Now they're one of the more widely distributed Australian geckos. And for a gecko, they're actually one of the most cold-tolerant geckos, which is interesting because they live in the outback a lot. They're quite common out west of the Dividing Range, in the outback, going quite far in inland New South Wales, all of that, most of the eastern side of Australia. And they'll also come towards the coast, around Sydney, and places like that. They're Watergans. So yeah, they're very widely distributed throughout all kinds of habitats, from rainforests to heathlands to deserts and shrubland, grassland. They're the masters of the outback, and they're a very diverse little gecko. They have slightly different colours and patterns depending on where they are, but this is the little Sydney form. They're quite pale. Whoa, getting a bit skittish there. But, you can see he has his full tail. The one I showed in my last video actually has a regen, so you can tell this one's a full tail because it's got the texture on it, and because it's longer and it's got these stripes, whereas the regens are just a smooth round brown bulb without any of this pattern. These guys will be eating little insects and invertebrates like that little spider over there. Yeah, they're nocturnal like most geckos. Very cute little guy. Come on, buddy. But yeah, they're kind of like an Aboriginal painting. I'll take him over here and release him. Bandy Bandy, or more specifically Eastern Bandy Bandy, because there's a few kinds. Eastern is one of the larger kinds of Bandy Bandy. These guys are the most beautiful snakes. They're definitely one of my favourites. They're just an amazing snake. These guys can get a bit bigger than this. It's average size one. This one they can get a little bigger, but they don't grow to a huge snake. Usually just a bit fatter than this. These guys are a very interesting species. They do have a mild venom, but it was interesting because a while ago, when these guys were first discovered, they were actually thought to have one of the deadliest venoms of any snake in the world, any land snake, venom equivalent to a sea snake, but not be able to penetrate human skin. But then recently it was discovered that if they wanted to penetrate our skin, they probably could, but they don't have high venom. They've only got a very mild venom, but these guys don't bite. They're very rarely known to bite, if ever. I've never heard of people being bitten by these guys. So what they'll do, I'll put him down here and see if he'll do it, but if I touch him here, right, see how he'll lift his body up like that. They can do it a lot more than this, but so that's called hooping, when he lifts his body up like that in those rings. That's their threat display. But you see him, come on buddy, cooperate. Oh, they usually do it. Tickle, tickle, tickle. You kind of get the idea, but yeah, see like that? See how he's lifting his body up? So when they lift their body up off the ground there, that's known as hooping, which is their Bandy Bandy's threat display. And they've got these beautiful black and white coloration. So both of those things is kind of saying to predators like birds, other snakes, goannas, foxes and cats and that, kind of saying like, I'm poisonous, back off, I can hurt you, even though they can't. These guys, on the end of the tail, they've got this kind of a blunt spine, and that helps them burrow, and they can also dig that into you a little bit. So they're completely harmless to people, but these guys are a burrowing species, so they actually spend most of their life underground. So they're fossorial. They spend 80% of their life or more underneath the ground, hiding under rocks during the day in burrows. So they're amazing diggers in the soft, loose soil. They can get away really quickly if they're in sand and that. But they'll come to the ground. Usually, in a lot of places, they'll only come to the ground on wet nights after rain. But in certain places, like where we are now, and a place further up north, but there's just some places that seem to be hot spots where they actually seem to come out even when it's not raining, so that's pretty amazing. And this is what we've basically come here to find, one of the main things that we've come here to find tonight. And we finally found one. I've been looking for this snake for over 3 years now. I've wanted to find one of these guys, so it's such a pleasure to actually find one, and you can just kiss him, they're so beautiful. Hello. Yeah, they're completely harmless, but he's the most gorgeous little snake. Aren't you, buddy? And these guys feed exclusively on blind snakes. So blind snakes are that small worm-like snake you often see in your flower pots and that, but that's all these guys feed on. So they burrow and they'll find blind snakes, and then sometimes blind snakes as well come up to the surface on wet nights and that, so these guys will come up looking for those blind snakes as well as sometimes getting a bit of warmth off the road. But that's all they eat. They don't eat mice, they don't eat snakes, they just eat blind snakes. That's it. Only thing they eat. Don't you, buddy? You love blind snakes. And they've got a bit of a shape like a blind snake. They've got a head that's very in line with the body. There's no neck as such. It's kind of just head straight to body without a neck. You can see him trying to burrow in there. Yeah, so they've got a shape like a blind snake. They just go bigger and the beautiful black and white colours, and they're a much cooler snake. They feel amazing, very soft and smooth. One of the most stunning snakes around here in the Sydney region. These guys range all along the east coast of Australia and inland to western New South Wales, and I think they go slightly into South Australia and into. So they can survive in quite a variety of habitats, from rainforests, rocky outcrops, heathlands, sandy soils in the outback, but very diverse species. You can tell them apart from other stuff like a tiger or a Stevens banded, which they don't look anything like anyway, but they've actually got bands on the stomach. You see the scales, these belly scales are almost exactly like the scales on top, and they're like the only snake to have those kind of markings, but they're just an amazing little snake. They are so beautiful. And they're nocturnal, of course. You'll never see these guys up above the surface during the day. You can see them curl up there. And look at them, they're just such a pretty snake. Absolutely stunning. I love these guys so much. It's beautiful. These guys, no words, they're just so beautiful. Like all snakes, they've got a forked tongue, which they can stick out to kind of taste the air and sense what's around them, threats and food and that. Beautiful. They're a reasonably cold tolerant species, so on nights that it's a bit cold for stuff like that, isn't it? These guys are still coming. Let this guy go now and let him go back to his hunting. He sticks out quite a lot, and most snakes you would want to camouflage, but these guys actually stick out on purpose to make things think that, Good night, buddy.